This is the story of Sora Kashiwagi, an ordinary high school student leading a relatively normal and simple life. He is at home doing his homework when he later receives a package in his name. He lives with Kaide, who is locked in her room due to pending work, so Sora receives the package, which is, to say the least, strange. The package is sent by his father, who, besides resembling Saitama, is a self-proclaimed adventurer currently in Egypt. His father mentions that the package contains a mummy that he entrusts to Sora's care. Sora expects it to be a terrifying mummy, but his father claims it's an adorable one and asks him to consider it as family. Sora is afraid to open the coffin because everything his father sends him has been dangerous. Once, his father sent him a cursed Daruma, another time a killer scarecrow, and even a doll that was supposed to protect him from evil but seemed to do the opposite. Knowing his father, despite the appearance the mummy may have, he is sure it will try to end his life. He prepares himself to defend against any threat, and at that moment, the coffin opens, and from it emerges this small and adorable creature that startles Sora. He doesn't want to let his guard down as he fears it might harm him, so he tries to put it back into the coffin, but the little mummy starts crying. It's so adorable that it even knocks on the door as if trying to enter. Sora is no longer sure if it's dangerous, but he still wants to send it back to Egypt. However, in its own way, the mummy indicates that it wants to stay and help around the house. Sora tells the mummy that, considering its size, it won't be of much help, which makes the little mummy cry even more. He then allows it to try to help around the house, but as expected, it doesn't work. On those previously mentioned papers, Sora's father wrote down everything he knows about mummies, including a warning never to remove the bandages. Sora does some research about mummies, but the ones described in the book are nothing like this one. Eventually, Sora accepts that the mummy can stay, but if it does, it needs a name. Later, Sora's pet dog, Pochi, comes in, and Sora thinks that mummies and dogs wouldn't get along. While Sora hugs his pet, the mummy also wants to be hugged, so it starts imitating Pochi's barking and movements, climbing onto Sora. But let's not forget about the name. Sora names the mummy, Mii. Once she receives a name, Mii knows she can stay there, and she's very happy about it. She's quite an endearing little mummy. Sora tries to teach her how to drink water, but she doesn't do it well, so he provides a smaller container. Now, Sora has to figure out what to feed her. Mii stares at Pochi's food while Sora looks for something for her to eat. By the time he finishes cooking, he notices that Mii is eating from Pochi's dish. Sora tries to give her cucumbers, but she doesn't like them. However, she enjoys apples and noodles. Look at how Mii sleeps next to Pochi. They're so cute together. At school, Sora tells his friend Tezuki that his father sent him a mummy, a small one, and invites him to his house to see it. When they arrive home, Sora finds Mii completely dry, so he gives her some water and she returns to normal. Tezuki is surprised because, like Sora, he had no idea mummies could be like this. Kaide is still unaware of this as she's still working. Mii is a bit afraid of Tezuki and won't let him touch her. Later, Sora decides to take a bath and plan to do it alone, but Mii wants to join him. Sora supposes that mummies wouldn't like water, but he thinks that there are yokai who love humans and bring them luck. When they are about to leave the bath, Mii is filled with water and looks like a balloon. At school, Tezuki gives Sora his English notes, as he will go to Sora's house later, and he asks him to copy them so he doesn't fail the exam. When he arrives home, Mii is dry again, but a little water solves the issue. But why does she keep drying out? That's something they'll find out later. Sora wants to prepare dinner, and Mii wants to help, so he makes a tiny knife for her, and she becomes very happy, starting to assist in the kitchen. Everything goes well until she slips and almost falls, but Sora saves her just in time, taking a hit on his face. After dinner, Kaide can smell it from her room, where she's still working. She's been there for about a week. While Sora copies the notes, Mii tries to help and ends up wrinkling Tezuki's notebook, so he makes her a small notebook of her own. Tezuki is left alone with Mii and is still scared of her, thinking she might eat him. Tezuki wants Mii to let him touch her, so he tries to give her food, but Mii interprets it as him trying to fatten her up to eat her. The fact that she scares him makes Tezuki want to touch her even more. After a while, Mii starts to get closer to Tezuki, and he grabs her, wondering what's inside and where the end of the bandages is, but Sora hits him and tells him that the bandages might be her skin. Sora gives Tezuki some dog food to make peace with Mii, and it works. Shortly after, Tezuki feels bad for bothering Mii. To prevent her from drying out, Sora plans to take Mii to school. Tezuki thinks it's a joke, but it isn't. The next day, there she is in Sora's backpack, trying to get out repeatedly. Sora talks to Mii and makes her promise not to move while they're at school, so he places her on the desk. But then a girl named Asa appears, and Mii catches her attention. Sora tells Asa that it's a stuffed toy, but she hears a sneeze, so she doesn't believe him much. Asa thinks Sora is a rebel for bringing a stuffed toy to school, which isn't that big of a deal. There's no doubt, Asa definitely heard Mii, so Sora acts as if he was the one who sneezed. Sora does the unthinkable. He tells Asa that he can lend her Mii, but it's not what she thinks because he quickly made several plushies similar to Mii. Asa arrives at the place and takes a stuffed toy, which turned out to be the real Mii, so Sora runs to find her. On the way, they encounter this half-zombie guy who doesn't help much. Asa leaves Mii in the locker room, and while she is alone there, Mii thinks about escaping through that hole and reuniting with Sora. At first, they almost catch her moving, but nothing happens. It seems that Asa doesn't see very well. Sora and Tezuki continue searching for Mii during physical education class, and although they meet Asa, they don't see Mii. As Sora still has a race to finish, he runs with all his might to finish quickly and keep looking for Mii. Speaking of Mii, she encounters a rather aggressive rat that starts chasing her. Sora already knows that Asa left Mii in the locker room, so he plans to go there. Unexpectedly, Mii emerges from the bushes, still fleeing from the rat. Sora tells Mii that she doesn't need to pretend to be a stuffed toy at that moment. Later, Asa talks to Sora and tells him that she lost the plushie he gave her, but this time Sora gives her a real one. At school, Mii doesn't dry out, so the next day, Sora wants to take her to school again. Despite being afraid of school, Mii prefers that over not spending time with Sora. The following day, Kaide finally finishes her work and leaves her room. She sees the food, but it's Mii's food, and not knowing about her, she thinks that Sora prepared it for himself. That's when Sora introduces Mii to her. Kaide becomes interested in the sarcophagus, as it turns out to be a gift she always wanted. Sora is about to go to school, but he suddenly falls ill. He doesn't want either of them to get close to avoid making them sick. Mii is somewhat nervous because she hasn't met Kaide yet, but Kaide mentions that she has met others of her kind, and they start becoming friends. Sora asks Kaide for some water but insists that she shouldn't enter the room, which doesn't work because she comes in through the window with a mask, and Mii also, but with a smaller one. Despite all this, Kaide still kicks them out of the room. Kaide prepares something for Sora to eat and leaves it with Pochi, who starts crying shortly after. Sora gets up as best as he can to change his clothes and later finds Mii dry again. This solves the doubt about why she was drying out. She cries so much when she misses Sora. Mii returns to normal, but Sora faints due to fever. Now, he allows them to take care of him. Tezuki visits him as well, while Kaide locks herself in her room again. Sora asks Tezuki to feed Pochi and Mii. At night, with no one to take care of Sora's health, Mii decides to help in her own way. She climbs onto the table and dips herself in water to place herself on his forehead. She does this over and over again throughout the night. The next morning, Sora wakes up much better, but now Mii is sick. Sora still doesn't go to school because he needs to take care of Mii, who insists on going outside. Since she's so eager to go, Sora agrees to let her out despite the cold. Quickly, Mii starts running and digging non-stop. Pochi helps her and digs a deeper hole, so Mii runs directly into it and buries herself there, like a potato. Sora is completely confused but decides to simply wait for her to come out on her own. His father's writings say nothing about what's happening. At school, Tezuki feels like he's being followed by something. Sora remembers the time he found a dying bird, and although Tezuki told him it would die, he took it anyway, and indeed, it died later on. However, nothing happens to Mii. After a while, she emerges from the ground as if nothing happened and with an appetite. Even though she was dirty, she cleans herself. Kaide will prepare dinner, but she puts on glasses that completely change her personality. She changes so much that she even harasses Tezuki, who immediately takes off the glasses, and she returns to normal. Sora tells Tezuki how Mii got better, and later, he writes that down as a note. There are still things he doesn't know about Mii. Remember I mentioned that Tezuki was being followed by something? Well, he is being followed by this little Oni class yokai. When they grow up, they look something like this, and Tezuki doesn't want to imagine it, so he asks the Oni not to follow him and even gives him Sora's address to stay there. However, upon arriving home, Tezuki realizes that the Oni followed him there. He refuses to let him in while he helps his sister and does his chores, but after a while, he lets him in. While Tezuki looks for something for him to eat, the little Oni falls asleep in his bed, but since he's all dirty, Tezuki makes him take a bath first, though it might not have been a good idea to jump right into the toilet. Tezuki remembers something that happened to him before with another yokai. Tezuki leaves the Oni in his bed, thinking he will only stay for one night. In fact, the next morning, he kicks him out of the house. Later at school, Asa brings Sora cookies shaped like Mii. Some classmates talk about a picture they took of a strange creature. At lunchtime, Tezuki tells Sora about the Oni that stayed at his house. Sora insists that he adopt him and let him stay there, but Tezuki says that when he left him in his backyard, he thinks the Oni left, but he couldn't be more wrong because the Oni returns at night, and this goes on for several days. He stays at night and Tezuki kicks him out during the day. Tezuki's sister knows that the Oni is there, and they finally decide to keep him. Sora wants Tezuki to bring Oni so that he can play with Mii sometime. Before all this, Sora mentions that perhaps the Oni was expelled from a festival called Setsuban, but it's been more than a week with Tezuki, and this idea doesn't quite fit. First, because of how dirty he was, and second, because of the scar he has, which brings back bad memories. When Tezuki learned about the existence of yokai, he was leaving the infirmary and met Sora there. Sora had something at his feet, and while being with Sora, Tezuki learned more and more about yokai. At first, he only encountered them when he was close to Sora, but then he started seeing them on his own. That's when he met this little injured dragon, the yokai from before, which he couldn't save, and he carries the guilt. Tezuki tells Oni that he still hasn't let him stay there and suggests he seeks help from a professional. At that moment, the Oni notices Tezuki's scar and realizes it's similar to his own. One night, upon arriving home, Tezuki finds Oni in a bad mood and with a Mii plushie, but his behavior is quite unexpected. Tezuki takes Oni to meet Mii, and at first, they just stare at each other, but then they start playing around, and even Pochi joins in. But the name, Oni, can't be left empty, so Tezuki needs to give him a name. Tanaka? No, that's a surname. After giving several unrelated names, he finally settles on the name, Kani, which somehow rhymes with Oni, and he ends up liking that name very much. That night, they all prepare dinner together, and Kani finds it a bit challenging, but he follows Sora's instructions. On the other hand, Mii is already an expert. Kani feeds Tezuki the best roll he prepared. Before leaving, Tezuki asks Sora to teach him how to properly take care of Kani. Although he finds it hard to admit, he is determined to keep him. Kani liked Mii so much that the plushie he had discarded earlier, he now hugs it to sleep. Well, pretends to sleep because he needs to take a bath, and upon hearing this, he pretends to be asleep until Tezuki calls him by his name. The next day at school, someone plays a prank on Tezuki by placing a fake lizard on his desk. They also give both of them one of those lizards as a gift. Mii wraps one of them in bandages but struggles with the tail part. One of the boys drops a lizard, and below, there is a group of girls. One of them has a bug on her back, but Asa removes it effortlessly, unlike the lizard, which falls right in front of her, showing that she is scared of them. Back at home, Tezuki tells Sora that he should teach Mii to stay at home, while Sora suggests that Tezuki should bring Kani to school sometime, but it's complicated because Kani is very clumsy. Sora returns home and finds Kaide sleeping in the coffin with Pochi. He takes the opportunity to show Mii the time, so she can wait calmly for him to return home without getting sad. If Mii doesn't cry during the time Sora is outside, he promises to read her stories. Sora leaves and tries to hurry to be on time. Meanwhile, Asa arrives home, and her mother isn't there. When she enters her room, she finds a little dragon, and she gets very scared. The dragon tries to calm her down by giving her a plushie, but it doesn't work. When Asa sees the dragon fall down the stairs, she wants to help, but she's so scared that she continues running away and even throws things at it. Fortunately, she doesn't hit it, otherwise, she would have killed it. Sora is back, and while passing in front of Asa's house, he hears her screams and finds her scared, so he accompanies her to see what's going on and tries to catch the lizard for her. When they enter, they see the mess the dragon made a while ago, and shortly after, they find the little dragon. Sora tries to explain to Asa that it's not a lizard. The dragon explains to Sora that Asa is injured after falling down the stairs, showing that it's concerned about her. Asa recognizes that the dragon is harmless and apologizes to him, and they end up reconciling. Meanwhile, at home, Mii wraps the toy lizard with bandages to pass the time. Sora goes with Asa and the dragon to her house and invites Tezuki as well, as he always wanted to see a dragon. Sora and Tezuki have been friends for a long time. They have been together since kindergarten, primary school, and secondary school. Sora knows him well, and although Tezuki may seem cold, the truth is that he is very kind. Upon arriving home, Mii excitedly runs towards Sora but becomes paralyzed when she sees Asa. Sora explains everything about yokai to her while they have tea, and Mii and the dragon become friends. Shortly after, Tezuki arrives accompanied by Kani. He is somewhat surprised to see the dragon because it reminds him of the one from before. They try to figure out what the dragon eats, but he doesn't seem to be interested in anything. Mii even tries to feed him dog food. Kaide wakes up and is surprised that Sora brought a girl home, imagining that Sora was interested in Tezuki. They inform Kaide about the dragon, who so far only eats a few things, like tofu. Asa will give the dragon a name she always wanted to use, Isao. Sora accompanies Asa back to her house, and on the way, she asks him how he met Mii. He tells her that his father sent her to him, and he thinks that if Mii is so prone to loneliness, it doesn't make much sense for her to feel good far from her birthplace. Even when Sora tried to send her back, Mii got very sad. There are still things he doesn't know about Mii, but from now on, Asa and Isao will live together. Upon learning about the existence of yokai, both Sora and Tezuki ask Asa to keep it a secret. The next day at school, Asa's group of friends show off their pets, all except her. However, she almost slips and says that she has a dragon. Both Sora and Tezuki see it, so after school, they ask her to be more careful when talking about it. If she wants to talk about Isao, she can do it with them as much as she wants, and they can even talk about him at school. Sora invites her to the rooftop, where they usually have lunch. Back at home, Sora tells Kaide that Asa and Isao will come over on Sunday. Suddenly, Mii starts acting strangely because her back itches, and she can't scratch it. Kaide mentions that Isao seems like an older brother, while Mii seems more like a little brother because of the things he does. For example, one day, Sora was cleaning the bathroom, and Mii wanted to help him, but he slipped and hit the wall. On another occasion, while Sora was doing laundry, Mii climbed up to the phone, and somehow he managed to make a call and started barking. Sora had to say it was his little dog, so yes, Mii is like a little brother they need to take care of. Everyone gathers at Sora's house, and Isao hugs Mii and Connie in that way and then flies with them. But flying isn't the only thing he does, as Isao has also learned to write. Asa didn't teach him, he learned on his own after she read him stories. So, Tezuki teaches everyone the entire alphabet. Isao managed to write his name and then plans something with the rest. He teaches them all to write too. Mii writes something for Sora, always together, which makes him happy and blush with excitement. The first letter Isao gave to Asa said, "Thank you for everything." Now, it's Connie's turn. "I love you." No, it's more likely he would write sushi or some other food. In the end, he ends up writing, "What do you think?" And since Tezuki made fun of him, Connie starts hitting him a little, which is how these two show affection to each other. After eating, they start finding hidden notes all over the house. They hid a lot of them, so they set out to find all of them. Asa wants to enter a certain room to search, but Sora stops her because, there, all the cursed things that her father sent her are kept. They found many notes, and as they read them, Connie becomes interested in this tomato. But Sora tells him not to touch it. Connie doesn't listen and takes it out. It turns out to be a thing that screams very loudly. They quickly silence it. Sora explains that it's a yokai capable of causing fainting if it screams for 5 seconds, and if it's longer, it can cause death. This used to be Kaide's alarm. Well, everyone wakes up assuming the risks they want. While they were talking, the yokai tries to escape and succeeds by rolling quickly. They must chase it because if it manages to remove the bandage, it will wreak havoc on the city. They chase it for a long way until it jumps into the river. However, don't worry, Mii will save the day. No, actually not. But it's alright because Connie has the solution. Not really. The bandage was about to come off when Isao remembers he can fly and catches the yokai, thus preventing a disaster in the city. Everything is fine, but Mii is acting a bit strange. After putting the yokai back in its place, Mii is still feeling down, but he remains kind and puts a blanket on Connie. The reason Mii is feeling this way is that he's worried about what was said earlier, about being like a little brother that needs protection. Sora hadn't realized it, but Mii is growing up, not in size, but you know what I mean. It's time to say goodbye, and the three bid farewell. Sora takes a bath with Mii, and Mii writes another note. Tezuki and Connie also take a bath. Well, sort of. Asa is studying, and it's getting late, so Isao takes the opportunity to bathe on his own. As promised, Sora tells Mii bedtime stories, although he changes his favorite story a bit because sleep won't let him read it properly. Connie sleeps with Tezuki, and at one point during the night, he is forced to ask Tezuki for affection. On the other hand, Isao takes care of Asa while she sleeps because she's quite careless. And so, each with their yokai, they all slept peacefully throughout the night. Now we see the boy from before, the one who looked like a zombie, and he's not doing well because he is surrounded by a bunch of black shadows. All this happening in the middle of class. His name is Tachiaki, and he has a bad reputation for acting that way. Later, he collapses in front of Sora. While the other kids were waiting for Sora to have lunch, he arrives carrying Tachiaki as best as he can. Asa carries him effortlessly. She's quite strong. Tachiaki was expelled from the infirmary, and that's why Sora brought him there. It seems he suffers from strong nightmares. Upon waking up, he almost hits Asa. Sora wants to help him, but Tachiaki just wants them to stay away, although he's a bit afraid of Tezuki after the way he looked at him. Later, Sora looks for him again, and people give them weird looks because As Tachiaki has a bad reputation, they think Sora is just as unstable. Sora invites him to his house to talk about what's happening to him. Tachiaki lives alone in an apartment. His parents kicked him out because he sleepwalks, and while asleep, he becomes quite aggressive, destroying everything in the house. Although he had tests done, the doctors gave up because they couldn't find the cause of his condition. It's something that has been happening since elementary school, and he even has protective amulets. So, Sora asks to see them. Indeed, he has many amulets, so Sora helps him remove them. Sora gives him an amulet of a yokai called Baku, which is capable of eating nightmares, although he doesn't tell him it's a real creature. Sora gives Tachiaki his phone number in case anything happens. When going to sleep, Tachiaki places the Baku under his pillow. Later, he reflects on how he treated the other kids and wants to apologize to them. While he sleeps, he wakes up in the middle of the night, and indeed, there's a Baku eating all his nightmares. He gets quite scared and calls Sora because he believes the Baku is eating his soul. Despite it being late at night, Sora heads over to see Tachiaki, who has the Baku on top of him. Sora is excited because it's the first time he's seen a Baku. Tachiaki overcomes his fear and holds it. Sora introduces Mii to Tachiaki to prove that yokai are real. The next day, it's clear that Sora didn't get much sleep because he spent the rest of the night explaining everything to Tachiaki. Asa wants to touch the Baku, but Tachiaki didn't go to school that day. Well, it actually took 4 days for him to come back to school. He had been sleeping all that time, and now he looks much better, not like the same person at all. He even apologizes to the kids. Now the group has a new member. Tachiaki joins them and makes amends with Tezuki because Mii took him by the hand and barked at him to do so. Later, they gather all the yokai, and Tachiaki names his Makumuku, but the Baku doesn't like it at first. Sora takes photos of all of them for the notes he takes about Mii. The next day at school, Tachiaki plans to apologize to everyone he treated badly before. Tachiaki wants to know how Makumuku entered his house when all the doors are always closed. So, Sora plans to investigate it that same night. To test it, he leaves Makumuku outside and goes to sleep. After falling asleep, Sora realizes that all this time, Makumuku has been responsible for Tachiaki's sleepwalking and somehow controls him while he sleeps. The next day, on their way home, Asa notices 2 guys looking for an Oni cub. Upon arriving home, she finds not only Isao but also Connie. Tezuki had been wondering where Connie went every day, and Asa asked her mother, who said Connie had been going to their house almost every day. To avoid this situation, Sora will seek help from someone who can take care of them while they go to school, although he's not sure if Mii will be okay staying alone with them. Sora's acquaintance, who is also Tezuki's, is this old yokai statue, where they'll leave the yokai while they go to school. But suddenly, Sora is kidnapped by a woman who seems like a ghost. Tachiaki and Asa go after him, but Sora also knows her. She's the goddess of that temple and is in charge of ensuring that people from the outside don't see the yokai while they take care of them. The kids go to school as usual, and after school, they pick up everyone, and they all had a good day. Even Mii looks much brighter than usual. The next day, they leave them at the new daycare again, and everything would be fine if it weren't for Makumuku opening the door slightly and, upon seeing an insect, Mii goes out. As Mii didn't notice, the goddess closes the door, and Mii couldn't get back in. He panics and hides, and that's when he meets another Oni, who, seeing that Mii is alone and lost, takes him to his house. To make matters worse, against the forecast of that day, it starts raining. Later, the goddess realizes Mii's absence. On their way to the Ona's cave, they see many more yokai, this multi-tailed fox, those dolls, that flying thing, and that dragon over there, even a unicorn. Mii finally arrives at the Ona's cave, and the Oni asks him to stay there until the rain stops but also tells him something that makes him cry, saying that he will never go back home, so he tries to console him by giving him a mushroom. The Oni suddenly experiences something strange, but Mii helps him. Mii somehow manages to communicate to him that he needs to go back to the goddess's temple, and he will help him get back there. The rain stops, and the Oni comes out with Mii to take him back. Meanwhile, the goddess is searching everywhere, and the old man laments that he can't move since he's a statue. However, everything turns out fine as Mii returns safely with the Ona's help. Later, the goddess explains to Sora what happened, and Sora asks Mii not to go out alone again. But that's not all because Mii wants to thank the Oni for what he did, so he prepares something for him. He leaves a drawing of them as a token of gratitude at the temple. At Tezuki's home, his sister tells him that Connie ate a cake that Sora had given her. These cakes are special to her because she likes Sora, and it's not the first time Connie has done it, it's actually the 9th time. Tezuki will talk to Connie to warn him, but he does it in a rather rude way, even telling him to leave. This makes Connie remember the treatment he received before, but it seems he doesn't give it much importance, and he goes to sleep. To Tezuki's surprise, Connie is gone the next day. At school, the group talks about their yokai, which are now at the daycare, except for Connie, who escaped, but they don't know that yet. Tachiaki asks Sora if he's not afraid that Mii only writes the phrase, always together, but Sora doesn't mind because the only things Mii knows how to write are that and apples. He thought Mii had learned the entire alphabet, but he only learned a few words. Sora realizes that Tezuki didn't take Connie to the daycare, but Tezuki responds that it's no big deal. When they return home, they realize Connie hasn't returned and won't return after being spoken to that way. Tezuki had tried to drive Connie away during the first few days and never told him to stay home, so he begins to see the consequences of his actions. The next day, Sora notices something is bothering Tezuki because he doesn't look well. In fact, he has been acting very strange. Later, Tezuki decides to tell Sora that Connie hasn't returned but left on his own, so he doesn't think it's necessary to look for him. Even though he says that, it's clear that he's worried. After classes, Sora, Asa, and Tachiaki offer to look for Connie, but once again, Tezuki refuses. Meanwhile, at the daycare, the kids miss Connie. Finally, we see what happened in the past with Tezuki and this dragon. They were being chased by a guy who eventually hit them both, and the dragon got injured in that event. After remembering this, Tezuki stops fooling around and goes to look for Connie. Meanwhile, the rest of the group also goes to search. Tezuki regrets treating Connie that way, even though Connie is quite a mess at home. Sora finds Tezuki, and they manage to see someone who seems to be Connie, and he is running away from them. Tezuki arrives at an unfinished building, while Sora finds Connie. No, it's not Connie, it's the Oni from before who helped me. Connie is actually trapped in this hole in the abandoned construction, so Tezuki helps him out. Sora arrives where Tezuki is, and moments later, Asa and Tachiaki also join them as they found Connie's pants. However, the search is over because Connie is right there. Tezuki apologizes to the kids for making them worry, and they all go to the daycare to reunite with the little ones, who have prepared a welcoming drawing for Connie. After everything is settled, on their way home, Sora finds a package addressed to him. Kaide is not home because she went out for work, but the package is from Sora's father. The note says it's nothing weird this time, but look how the box moves. Obviously, it's strange. At that moment, Tezuki arrives at Sora's house and calls, but Sora tells him he's not there to prevent him from entering. Tezuki doesn't believe him and enters from the back because he knows Sora received another package from his father, and the reason Sora wants him away is that it might be dangerous. Sora manages to get Tezuki out of the house to open the package. When he opens it, he speaks. Anubis? He asks them to call him Anyan and is offended that Sora is threatening him with a baseball bat, so he wants to go back to Egypt. He can't walk. He's a statue that was in a gift shop in Egypt, and Sora's father bought it and sent it home. At first, he was hesitant to send anything after sending so many dangerous things, so he settled for the statue. Anyan could have spoken up and said it wasn't normal, but seeing that his father worked hard to give him a gift, he decided not to say anything. Anyan meets Mii, and the first thing he says is that he's not a mummy, then he puts him in his mouth, but not to eat him, it's something he likes to do. Mii seems to enjoy it, as if it were a massage. Anyan is about to show them something. He can see the future, or state the obvious, like predicting that it will rain that night or they will eat curry, with one being obvious and the other untrue. Sora hopes that Mii and Anyan will become good friends. At the bottom of the box, there's another gift, a short letter, and sand from Egypt. Sora takes precautions before handling the sand, and Mii is excited about it, while Connie seems bothered by something. Mii is desperate to get into the sand, and he enjoys it very much. Sora hopes to go to Egypt someday with Mii. Tachiaki and Asa head home and meet the new addition to the group, Anyan, who has been equipped with wheels to improve his mobility. Anyan gets to know Makumuku and Isao, and at one point, he thinks he made Makumuku explode. Anubis is actually a god from Egyptian mythology, but it's not like he was trapped inside a statue. Anyan is actually an inanimate object with a soul, known as a Tsukumagami, just like the old man statue. Sora compliments Asa, and Tezuki begins to remember that Sora has always been like that, even with him, without feeling any shame in saying those things. In fact, he has never seen him embarrassed until now when he has hiccups. Mii gets scared because they joke that if you have hiccups more than 100 times, you could die. At that moment, something strange happens. Mii's bandages seem to come undone, and although they want to help him, Isao and Connie prevent them from doing so. Tezuki doesn't do much either because, after all, he was curious to know what was inside Mii from the beginning. Asa tries to stop him, but it only makes things worse, and suddenly Tezuki's vision becomes cloudy. Sora vividly remembers that his father told him not to remove Mii's bandages. In the end, it turns out that all of this was a plan by the kids to get rid of Sora's hiccups because they believed in the myth of the 100 hiccups. In the blink of an eye, Mii returns to normal. When Asa and Tachiaki are about to leave, Sora reveals that Pochi is about to turn 50, and he belongs to a breed that lives for hundreds of years. He has been alive even before Sora was born, the biggest revelation of the anime, no doubt. Kaide returns home and meets Anyan. Although he didn't like being there at first, he thanks Sora because he had a lot of fun that day. When they were children, Sora invited Tezuki to the so-called Divine Land Festival, which is celebrated once a year, and the tickets are these leaves that someone named Yamada gave them, an oni. Tezuki refused to go and told Sora that they should stop hanging out with those creatures and find different friends. These words stuck with Sora, even though there was nothing wrong with what he said. But anyway, back in the present, at school, one of the kids took a photo of a dog, but it wasn't an ordinary dog. It disappeared after the photo was taken. Upon realizing it was a yokai, Sora and Tezuki decided to cover it up. This creature is a young inagami, and the adults of this species can take on human form and speak. When they see the injured one in the photo, they decide to look for it to save it. That night, as Sora is about to sleep, Anyan interrupts him because he wants to watch a foreign series, and Sora joins him. The next day, Mii doesn't want to stay at the daycare because he had a nightmare the night before, and when he woke up, Sora wasn't by his side. Pay attention to this because the goddess gives him a kind of label that sticks to Mii. That day marks the beginning of the holidays, so Sora wants them all to go out together because he doesn't know if they'll be able to hang out after they graduate. Tezuki, in a toxic manner, thinks that Sora won't want to hang out with them anymore and gets upset. Later, they head to a mountain in search of the inagami. It's a mountain with a bad reputation, but that's to keep spirits away from humans. The path splits into two, so they separate into pairs to search, but they find nothing. Tachiaki realizes that Sora and Tezuki are fighting. Speaking of Tezuki, he notices something strange, so they return to the meeting point. As they are about to leave, Sora realizes that something has changed. The path that was split into two is now a single one, and to top it off, music starts playing. The thing is, do you remember the festival from before? Well, it's that very same day, and they got involved in it, which is dangerous because they don't have an invitation. It's a place for non-humans. 3 spirits appear, and Sora talks to them, being honest and admitting they don't have invitations. This causes the creature to grow larger and want to attack them all. Sora asks that the punishment be only for him, but even though the creature found it interesting, it ignores him and attacks everyone. At this moment, Mii saves the day with 4 valid invitations, and the creatures calm down, ceasing to be hostile, and they let them pass. Everything turned out well, but Tezuki is angry with Sora for how he acted. He hits him and runs away. Sora follows him because he doesn't understand the reason for his behavior. It's then when he meets Yamada. Yes, he's the Oni who gave him the invitations, and he was so lucky that the current invitations are the same ones Yamada gave him as a child. Sora asks Yamada about the inagami, and it turns out there are 2 of them named Ah and Yu. As for Yamada, he really likes humans. Ah and Yu were seen by humans, and Ah bought some time for Yu to escape, but in the end, they both fled and had a falling out. They find them, and they are fighting each other, so Sora and Tezuki take the initiative to separate them because the conflict between the inagami resembles their own. Sora talks separately with Ah and makes him understand that he shouldn't act that way towards Yu, while Tezuki talks to Yu. Thanks to this, both inagami reconcile, just like the 2 of them. But not everything is going well because a human infiltrates the festival. Tezuki and Sora talk to resolve their differences, and somehow, Sora was mentally preparing for the possibility that Tezuki might leave someday, but he tells him to stop with the nonsense because he would never leave. The group is at this waterfall, watching as the inagamis climb it effortlessly, with no idea that Mii was going to be kidnapped by the guy from earlier. By the time they realize, he had already taken him away. Yamada tells Sora to stay calm, assuring him that they will easily find Mii because the guy wouldn't let him escape. But literally a minute later, the alarms go off, meaning they lost track of the kidnapper. Sora gets desperate, and that's when Tachiaki remembers the label that the goddess had placed on Mii earlier. Maybe they can find him with that. Meanwhile, the guy plans to sell Mii, but guess what? The label comes off with a thread, something that only Tezuki, with his hawk-like vision, can see. The label is a shikigami, and now they know where Mii is. They have to find a way to get there, and the quickest way is to climb the rocks of the waterfall, but it's also the most challenging. Nevertheless, Tezuki doesn't just tell him to be careful, he gives him ideas on which rocks he can climb more safely. Asa doesn't fall behind and, with her great strength, propels Sora to start climbing. Unfortunately, when he is about to reach the top, he slips and falls, or almost falls, because the Inigamis catch him and carry him up the waterfall, bringing him to the top. Meanwhile, the guy is unable to remove the Shikigami from Mii, and by the time he manages to do it, he already has Sora on top of him. This guy sees Mii as nothing more than a pile of money, which angers Sora, and he pounces on him to struggle. Moments later, the mountain god takes action and gives the guy what he deserves, and finally, Sora gets Mii back. As for the guy, he will be whipped 100 times and burned until he dies, I suppose. Our little group of friends is not only safe but also rewarded with these boxes for helping to catch the intruder. Sora gives one of the gifts from the god of the land to the temple goddess, and as for the Inigamis, and Yu, the god of the land appointed them as guardians of the mountain. Then, they all go to Sora's house, where Kaide welcomes them. Tachiaki hadn't met her in person before, but he recognizes her because Kaide is a model he admires. They still have a gift from the festival, the biggest box. The kids are upset they didn't go to the festival, so they apologize on their behalf, but it's time to open the gift. In stories, big boxes bring bad things. That's why Sora gave the smallest one to the goddess. But it's okay because inside this huge box is everything they need to have their own festival at Sora's house. To make it more exciting, Kaide has many kimonos. After feeling sad for not going to the festival, the kids now have one all to themselves. Everyone has fun playing at the festival events. In this shooting game, Connie and Mii play but miss the target. Tizuki, on the other hand, is quite good at it and wins prizes for all 4 of them. As for Isao and Asa, they get many balloons. And so, the festival unfolds smoothly. Sora mentions that he wants to spend not only this vacation with them but all the following ones, so they make plans for the future, like going to the beach or the mountain. The anime ends with Sora having breakfast and doing housework, with Mii's help, and I suppose they will stay together forever. And that's how the first season of this anime ends. If you've reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you've been one of the few people to make it this far. So comment the word mummy in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.